Big dog, we need to talk about YCS Brazil and the events that happened over the weekend. Finally, an event that I know I can say right. I said it right? There are so many things that happened over the weekend. Awesome tech cards, new strategies that can compete, but of course, some narratives that we do have to debunk. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day, phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. YCS Brazil was a unique moment in Yu-Gi-Oh! It is our first major event after the ban list and having the new pack Legacy of Destruction. Powerful strategies like Melodious, Yugioh, and Tenpai Dragon have gotten an insane amount of support from this set and are thought of as decks that can compete. And then it's the other half of the room still saying that it's a tier 0 format. But is it really a tier 0 format? And despite introducing some new and powerful decks, if you looked at the top cut of YCS Brazil, you would say yes. A little bit of a spoiler alert, the top 8 of YCS Brazil was all Snake Eyes play. And under normal circumstances, that would usually be enough to put a nail in the coffin and say that this format is completely over. But today, not only am I here to give Yu-Gi-Oh! Players hope that it is not a tier 0 format, at least not yet, but I also want to break down what our players doing to be able to combat the meta and give you the information you need to be able to destroy your opponents. Unless it's me. You're not beating me. Boy, I ain't Drake, I'm Kendrick. You better watch out. And I think it's best to start off by talking about the popular tech cards that players are using to be able to combat the top decks. Now, there wasn't a ton of innovation just yet, and if you guys want to see what the top staple are to be able to destroy the meta, I actually just so happened to have made a tier list last week. Go ahead and check it out. But some cards that I noticed that players are using is Dimensional Barrier. Now, this isn't necessarily good against Snake Eyes because they move more towards a Link base, but this is incredibly good against decks like Branded and Tenpai Dragon. I think moving forward, having this card inside of your sideboard just might be a must because it can completely shut down a strategy when going first, and to add a little bit of spice to it, it's searchable with Triple Tactics Thrust. Another card that I think is really impactful is Forbidden Droplet. Being able to respond to your opponent's card effects by getting rid of some of your cards and also preventing them from responding depending on the cards that you get rid of is crazy good. Even with Baron and Warlord Savage being banned, it's still a great answer to cards like IP Masquerena, Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, and SP Little Knight, among a host of other cards. If your deck struggles to make Abyss Dweller, then Silent Graveyard just might be the next best thing. Preventing players from activating monster effects is crazy big right now. Going against Snake Eyes, it stops Flame the Urge. It can stop Low from summoning itself back to the side of the field, and of course, all of the other graveyard-reliant decks. It's huge! Cosmic Cyclone may be one of the single most important removal cards in the entire game. Not only can it get rid of important field spells, like the Snake Eyes field spell or the Tenpai Dragons, it also allows you to be able to get rid of important spells and trap cards when you're going against decks like Voiceless Voice. Deck Lockdown is crazy good against so many decks in the meta. After all, it is a card that I said you should buy before it skyrockets in price, and the Psy-Frame package is still incredibly good. There are so many strategies that are spell reliant. Being able to use Psy-Frame Gear Delta to stop their spell card is huge, especially since that Psy-Frame Gear Gamma can now be played. And if you play Psy-Frame Lambda, you cook it! Nobody has played Psy-Frame Lambda. I just really like the card. And last is a Floodgate. Skill Drain. Players have figured out cards like Synchro Zone do not work, so they've just went back to all reliable. Bro, I really can't defend Skill Drain being fair if people that are not supposed to be playing Skill Drain are playing it. Now that we're done with the tech cards, I think it's time to circle back to that question that we had at the beginning of the video. Is this a tier 0 format? I would say absolutely. Right now, no. While YCS Brazil is the first premier event that we've had with Legacy of Destruction, there are a few flaws at the event that I would like to talk about that may change how you think and how you perceive Yu-Gi-Oh! When most players hear YCS, they think top of the line event, tons of Yu-Gi-Oh players, lots of competition. But like I said, one of the biggest draws for YCS's is that it has a lot of people. But I think it's best when we can look at a YCS event that has a ton of players where we can pull a lot of statistics from. This particular YCS only had 378 players, and while there were top premier players there, I don't think that there is enough statistics to be able to define an entire format, especially where there were regional events with other top players attending to that had more players. But fortunately enough, not only do we have YCS Brazil statistics to pull from, we have a couple of big regionals that we can talk about and some really good decks in those particular events. Let's go ahead and start off with the first place list from Brazil. We still have to congratulate Rafael Moreno playing in a competitive event with some of the most fiercest competitors and getting first place with Snake Eyes Cash. This particular build seems to be the standard of what Snake Eyes is going to be. The inclusion of Snake Eyes Diabel Star is a crazy good card. Not only does it help him go into rank 7 plays, it's also a really good card at getting over threat. And if you look at his side deck, cards like Deck Lockdown, Cyframe Gear Gamma, and Delta are great play Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm pretty confident the Lyraleska symbol Nightingale is for against Tenpai Dragon, which is really smart because that card can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, so can't get OTK. The second most represented deck was Voiceless Voice, and Sergio Domingo's build shows that this deck can be mixed with the branded cards fairly effectively. I think it's cool to see that they're using the Legacy of Destruction's Blessing of the Voiceless Voice inside of their deck, and as you can see for the sideboard, this strategy is all decked out with deck lockdowns, silent graveyards, and forbidden droplets. Voiceless Voice may not have made top 8, but I definitely think you're going to see more Voiceless Voice in the future, as this strategy was the second most represented, and it's also a very strong strategy against all of the decks in the format. Now, Tenpai Dragon is the third most represented deck, and this strategy just came out of Legacy of Destruction. It's pretty good. Now, this particular version of Tenpai Dragon is going to be fairly standard. One thing that I think that they're going to start playing is Crossout Designator to be able to stop Dimensional Barrier, and it doubles back as being able to use it to prevent your opponent from hand trapping you. Congratulations to Adriano Vasconcelos. I am trying my best to learn how to pronunciate things, but it doesn't work right now. If we had to pick a big 3 into Yu-Gi-Oh, I think that those would be the most powerful decks into the format. But that doesn't mean that other strategies simply can't compete. I know Dark World players are going to be up in arms when they realize that Bruno Rodriguez Feria has topped with this particular deck. Now, I think it might be because of the lack of Droll and Lockbird, but also because this deck can play cards like Skill Drain, and Super Polymerization isn't a bad card to be able to break boards. As you can see, there is a little bit of innovation for strategies that may not have been played before. I think that it's always a healthy sign, even when you look at an event like YCS Brazil, and you are able to see some other strategies that can flourish and thrive. Kinda like how Leon Ranger's Horus Stun deck did really well too. Now, Horus Stun became pretty popular at the tail end of last format, and it seemed to be able to carry over. Not only does cards like Skill Drain still apply here, being able to negate your opponent's board, this deck gets even more toxic by playing Majesty's and Vanity's Fiend and Secret Village of Spellcasters, because I'm Seti is a spellcaster monster. Really, bro? I think YCS Rio does give you indication on what are going to be some very strong Yu-Gi-Oh strategies. But if we look at the Kissimmee Regional, which actually had 600 players, close to double of what Brazil has, it's going to give us an indication that it is going to be a different type of format. Like if we look at the first place deck profile, Marcus Fontes got first place with Melodious. It's not to say that Snake Eyes can't compete, as it did grab 3 of the 8 spots, but that just so happens to be way less overbearing, and when you take a look at this Melodious deck, you start to see that it's a real deal. I think one of the biggest drawing points for Melodious is Herald of Orange Light, because even if your opponent is playing powerful monster effects like hand traps, or maybe even other cards to stop you, you have a way to not only stop that monster effect, but destroy it. Something that most strategies just simply don't have. And then in that same regional, there's Robert Tucker with Salomon Greats using the new Code of Soul from Legacy of Destruction. This particular build is built on summoning Salomon Great Pyro Phoenix. But as you can see, even down to a regional level, you can still see those powerful tech cards being used. And if we go to another event bigger than YCS Brazil, the Hartford Regional, Snake Eyes only got potentially 2 spots. And in case you guys were wondering what was the competition like, Shuping Zhu is a well-respected Yu-Gi-Oh player and he got 8th place. I think the biggest take that we can take from here is that regionals are a lot tougher than what people are giving it credit. Everybody does look at YCS as the premier event, and there normally is no shortage of competitive players. But to disregard a regional, especially if it has more people than a YCS, or maybe just as equally as comparable as much as a YCS, I think you inhaling that stuff a little bit too much. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh will continue to be interesting, and I can't wait for more premier events so we can do more things like this and break down what's happening in the meta. But more importantly, I want to hear your thoughts about the Yu-Gi-Oh format. Is it a tier 0 meta? Be sure to let me know down below in the comment section, but also check out these other videos so I can catch you on the next one.